Hey everyone, it is Irene Lyon here, and welcome to this entire world of nervous system health and healing. Today I have an interview chat for you with one of my students, one of my Smart Body, Smart Mind, also known as SBSM students. Her name is Raven, and we just had a chat talking about her experiences within SBSM. She shares so many great ones, but also her experiences with some other programs and offerings that she has come across that are not mine, that are of other practitioners out there. And that is how we connected. Is I had posted on one of my social media feeds about why I personally and professionally do not focus on specific parts of the brain, specific systems in the brain. In this case, we talk about limbic retraining systems, so where you're working with these specific parts. This is not my expertise. I have not done these programs myself. However, when I posted on my social media, she instantly replied to me and told me her story about why or how these did not help her. And then she came into the work that I do and offer, and that was what helped her learn about her nervous system and regulate it within. So I wanted to make this video and share her story because we get so many questions from you guys asking, how is Smart Body, Smart Mind and Irene's work different from all these other programs and courses that are out there? I, of course, cannot go through all of the programs out there. I just don't have the time to do so. But when I have a student who has experienced more than I have in this world, I like to talk to them, hear their experience, and learn from them. And everyone is different. So I think it's important to know that for some, these other things may work for a person. In this case, this did not help Raven. What helped her in the end was the curriculum that I have developed. So we talk about that. It was so good to meet her and talk to her. I have no doubt that we'll have her back on to share her experiences. Maybe in a year's time. We did this recording in 2022, just to date this, and she began the work in 2021. So she is a year into it, and we also speak about just the importance of showing up and doing the work even when we might not want to. Enjoy the conversation. Hey Raven, thank you so much for joining me today and hanging out.
It's a pleasure, really, truly.
So I want to talk about your journey through Smart Body, Smart Mind, but before we dive into your experiences and how and why we connected over social media, which I'll tell the story, tell everyone here who's listening and watching who you are, and what you're up to these days, what your journey has been like.
Yeah. So, like she said, my name is Raven. I started this journey a little bit over a year ago. So in 2021, started SBSM, was coming out of a 5-year stint of really chronic illness, dysregulation, that you'll get into more than likely in your own story, and just so many health implications that came along with that. Before that, I had grown up really in a lot of dysfunction, moved into a lot of intense caretaker roles, being a nurse, being in bone marrow transplant, taking care of really chronically ill people, and then also moving into real estate and meeting needs in a fast-paced metropolitan area, which is also another thing, until ultimately I had a crash of my own and other sicknesses that came along with that. And then I just kept searching for years and years, and we can get into all of that, all the different things that I tried, until one day I found SBSM. I found it over Instagram, and there were 3 days left to enroll for SBSM 10. So that was in 2021 that I started, and you suggested, hey, before you do this, check out my 3-part series on healing trauma, like your free resources. And I went through it, and it was as if I woke up for the first time, and you're in this super awareness and can see through time and space for a moment. Like it didn't linger forever, but like this snapshot of your life, and you go, oh my gosh, this is what I've been wanting and needing, and this is just like everything, and it all made sense. And as you go along, of course, you have to unpack all of that, and it may not make sense when you're going through, but that initial snapshot was what I was like, I have to do this. Like, I know it. It was the
Yeah.
only thing that I had 100% certainty on.
You felt it
Everything
like in your body.
Oh, yeah, 1,000%. I went from 100% to it's 1,000% now.
That's awesome. So we're in 2022 now. You
Mhm.
began Smart Body, Smart Mind, SBSM in
Yep.
2021. And it sounds like, so for everyone listening and watching, you sent me a direct message on Instagram. I think social media is great for this because that's how you found the work. But I had done a post, just for context, talking about, I don't even remember exactly what it was, but why I personally don't focus on just one part of the brain or one part of the nervous system when I'm working with my students and when I'm teaching in the online format that I do. And I think I highlighted the limbic system. Because we need, like, obviously our limbic system is in our system, in our brain, in our central nervous system, and there is a lot of focus on it. And it's not that we don't want our limbic system to be healthy, and I have found that a human who is in a state of dysregulation and all the things that you are probably experiencing, the approach needs to be a bit more holistic. And I know that sounds cliche in some ways, but we really do need a overarching whole body, whole nervous system viewpoint and practice, not just focusing on one thing. So when you saw that post, tell me what, tell me how you responded to that in the way that you want to share now.
Okay, in all candor, here we go. So, there is a certain program called DNRS that I had done, and it does just highlight limbic system retraining, neural retraining. And I hadn't thought about that program in a while, and then I saw the post. I think it was someone else had written into you that maybe it just wasn't, everything that they needed. And like that trigger went off in me where I saw it, and I just messaged back in that post so boldly, like, I fucking hated DNRS.
Wow.
I did. And so, yeah, and we can unpack that. But
Sure.
like you were saying, it was this one little piece that for some people, maybe that one little piece moved them into a slightly different system or a different way, or, took off one layer for them. But I know for me, um, my body just knew it wasn't everything that I needed.
Yeah.
And it brought up
So
a lot.
yeah, no, I
Mhm.
appreciate the candor and the honesty. And just for everyone listening, I haven't done the program per se, we're talking about,
Right.
and so I don't have a professional or a personal experience of it. I just hear from our students, your peers in Smart Body, Smart Mind, and even in the smaller course of mine, the 21-day nervous system tune-up. They'll say this wasn't what I had hoped, or it wasn't all that I needed, or maybe it helped me a little bit, but it didn't get me
Yeah.
into my body. Um,
It keeps you in your mind.
yeah, can you explain a little bit about what you experienced
Yeah, sure.
in that program?
So this program, I did this at the beginning of 2019. So this is
Hmm.
going to be a few years before I even knew about SBSM or started any of that, right? So I had no education about any of this, really. Yeah, and so the program is supposed to help with chronic fatigue and, things like fibromyalgia, all this different stuff. And so it focuses on a program that you move through where you are triggered or you have the thought of a certain thing. Let's just say it's chemical sensitivity,
Yeah.
right? Because a lot of people suffer with that. And so then you're going to, in your mind and like walking through, you're gonna tell your body to stop that. And then you're gonna tell it, like, it's okay. And then you're gonna imagine a scenario in which you are capable and having fun, and then you're gonna move out of that and be like, "Okay, thank you." And so, as I was doing it, these things would arise in me, and, um, and I didn't want to stop it. I didn't want to go. Stop, stop, stop. Because to me, it was creating just more resistance, more friction for me. And I even remember telling, like my spouse, I would tell him, I'm trying to do it. I'm doing it faithfully, like every day. I'm trying. But whatever it is, I don't think that it wants to be stopped. I think it wants to come out. And I had no blueprint. I had no skills. I had no education surrounding that other than like, you just need to stop it, shut it down.
Wow.
And so that was my experience. And I had actually gotten into the program because of people that I knew that were also chronically ill. They had done it. I had walked alongside them and I saw them get marginally better with the various things like POTS, different things. But honestly, within 6 months, I could see things returning or, states starting to shift back or
In
um,
those friends,
mhm,
people that you
mhm,
knew. Got it.
mhm. Yeah. And so one of the things that I noticed for me was a lot of anger. I had no,
Mm.
like we talk about capacity, I had no buildup, no sense of safety. Um, all of that to even be able to start tapping into like those bigger energies that were coming up. It just my body was like, I don't like this.
Right.
I don't want to. Yeah.
Yeah, what you're explaining, thank you. It's very clear to me. Um, if I think about an individual who say has been told by their doctor to meditate, right? And you know this theory because you've studied now with me, and they say that because some research will say that that will help with nerves and anxiety and
Right.
all that kind of stuff. And then a person goes to meditate and they sit and they try to focus or they try to clear their mind, and all they feel is all the chaos inside, and they think something's wrong with them because they can't just do the thing that
Yeah.
apparently the study has shown. That's what I'm sort of hearing from you, is that you
Mhm.
intuitively felt these things and you knew something actually different had to happen with them as opposed to just trying to wipe them out.
Yeah.
Would you agree?
100 again, 100. I'm with the percentages today,
Yeah.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was because I just knew it.
Yeah.
And that's the reason why you say smart body, smart mind. Like when your body's freaking out, but you expect your mind to be peaceful, like you're gonna have that contrast within you and it feels terrible.
Yeah. Raven, what were you like, if you don't mind sharing, what was going on in your body that led you to search for trying to figure out your system and heal?
Yeah, definitely chronic fatigue, very much fluctuating like emotions, anxiety, depression. And then I got mold toxicity, Lyme. I was passing out randomly.
Oh, wow.
So there's kind of like a laundry list of things that chemical sensitivity, that was a big reason why I was trying DNRS because it was really hard to go out in the world
Yeah.
because you could just pick up on everything. It was so heightened, like sensitivity to EMF, so electromagnetic fields, which are inescapable in our world as we know it today. And so
Mm-hmm.
just life. I felt
Yeah.
allergic to life,
Yeah.
honestly,
That's a
to
great way of
people,
putting it. Yeah.
to any type of environment. So
Now, was that occurring? May I ask how old you are?
yeah, I'm 31,
You're
and so
31.
I started really okay. Well, I guess I went down at about 28.
Okay.
Like, really, where everything just set in and the body was like, "No more. Like, I can't do this." And if you would have asked me before I started this program, I'd been like, I never had anything until I turned 28, and then 28 was hell. Not true. Like, you start to put together the things throughout your life and childhood, adulthood, just all sorts of things that are like, "Whoa, this stuff has been there, since childhood." I just had no knowledge, vocabulary, sense of self to even put words to that. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a very common thing, which I've seen, and you've probably now seen in folks, is that they go, yeah, it all happened, like you just said, at that age. But now that I learn more, actually all those little things that were occurring in my teens and early 20s and in
Mhm.
school were a result of this
Yeah.
stored stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think, tell me if there's any more you would like to share around your experience, because you also had said that you had done some other
Oh, yeah.
methodologies. It sounds like you had thrown the kitchen sink, to use that
Uh-huh.
term.
Yeah, another was EMDR. That's a eye movement desensitization.
Tization, yeah,
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 that one. So I was doing that, and then you establish to as you get into, of course, the mind, right? Like you have to bring up these scenarios that were painful, traumatic, whatever it
mhm,
is, and then you use eye movement. You can also use sound.
yeah.
I think there was another form too, like
Sometimes
just
touch will be,
yeah, like
yeah,
just as long as you're having that polarity, right? Like you're
yeah,
doing different ways, hearing different things. And so we were establishing people like, okay, if you get in this scenario and you need to get out of this, like we created safe people and like you create like 5 of them. And so why that didn't work for me was because I had never like I'm gonna cry on this part because
yeah,
it's just the human condition, some of us that really have struggled in life, like I had never fully known a regulated, safe person.
yeah.
And so for me going into that, not knowing how to get pulled back out of it was horrible. You know? Yeah.
And what you share, so again, so EMDR, again, I'm going to put a little bit of a disclaimer here. For some people, it can be very useful.
Um,
And from my learning, and I've done a little bit of it as a client, but it's always in conjunction with something else. It isn't just that. And it's with a highly trained somatic practitioner who has that as a
yeah.
skill. And even if we read Bessel van der Kolk's book, The Body Keeps the Score, which is like a huge book, easy to find, even he who endorses EMDR has said in that book, this is not for folks who have early trauma, who have
Yeah.
severe developmental trauma. Just like you said, and we don't need to know your history, but like you said, there was no safety, there was no one regulated around you.
Hmm.
And in that case, this methodology isn't the right fit,
Yeah.
right? From my experience and from hearing from colleagues and clients, it works very well when someone is already regulated and maybe they have a car accident or a bit of a very mild little bit of PTSD from something that's a shock trauma, but not this early lack of safety, attunement, connection.
The deep foundational things. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So tell me, so you come across the healing trauma series, you
Yeah.
enter into a different reality of this is really important information. Yeah. Even as I say that, what do you notice in your body? I sense an instant shift.
Yeah, I went from talking about the other thing that didn't, you know, bring me a lot of peace or safety. Just like you can just feel it throughout your whole body, like down your spine into your core, activating like that true sense of self, all of that, just as we even talk and think about it. It's like when you get into the work, you can eat a nourishing meal, but it feels like the most nourishing meal you'll ever eat in your life. You know, just that
Yeah.
comfort and yeah.
Like a sense of aliveness.
Yeah.
So talk about your experience with Smart Body, Smart Mind. So you come across this on Instagram, you
Mhm.
obviously joined last year. Walk those listening through who maybe have had the experiences with other methodologies, or maybe they're considering, because this is, my team get this question so often. How are these programs different from Smart
Yeah.
Body, Smart Mind? I know the difference from the fact that I created the curriculums and what's within, but from your perspective, what was one of the significant factors that landed that was just very different for you?
Safety.
Okay.
Like, that was the number one thing because, like, the other ones, like, I'd never known that, and I didn't have that foundation. And so SBSM, of course, is much longer. There's so much to it. There's the education, there's the practices, there's the integration, there's just it hits every level, but just taking that time, building that's what made a world of difference for me. Because if you can't really get to that place, then you can't use those other modalities. You can't really utilize your resources, honestly, whether it's physical, emotional, supplemental, all of those things. And so that's what made it so different for me. And then you start trusting, and the moment you start becoming aware to your environment, to yourself, to the boundaries of your body, the boundaries of your physical world, all of that is what really was the beginning.
Yeah.
The
So that
beginning.
was the beginning. And you mentioned safety.
Mm-hmm.
And just out of curiosity, because I have you here, what were some of the actual practical lessons from Smart Body, Smart Mind that you kind of come back to over and over again that were just like in your back pocket kind of thing?
Yeah. Um, Constantly orienting, because orienting just brings you into awareness, and awareness is where life flows. And so that's constant, because the moment you get out of that, you step back into whatever is going on in here.
Yeah.
You're no longer out here. And so that the diaphragms.
Mm.
Gosh, whew, I love, love, love the diaphragms. But then I would say probably a key one for me especially was the adrenal kidney exercises. And I know that's usually a popular one, and for good reason, because we live in, usually high stress environments. And anyway, that was important for me too, because I came from a family where kidney adrenal issues are also like genetic. My mom, her sister, they have these rare mutations in a disease
Oh,
called
wow.
Gittleman's. And so literally that complex does not work well for them, and they dump all of their necessary minerals for balance and homeostasis, like sodium, potassium, magnesium. And so I've been working on replenishing that, but actually seeing, even though the doctors say, oh, it's tubular, like you can't do anything about it, working with that and working on, that was probably a generational trauma,
Yeah.
honestly, in my family. And so seeing a lot of results, like, through that had
That's,
been there literally my whole life. So,
so thank you for sharing that. So you mentioned the diaphragms, which again, for those who are listening and who don't know what that is, it's little teaching point here. It's working with these spaces and containers within the body that store survival stress, that store emotion and trauma and memory. Um, and I'll never forget, I was talking to one of your peers. This was a couple years ago. Her name was Haley in Australia. We'll link her talk near this. And she said, I just didn't understand how just touching and tuning into these places of my body was going to move me into a different career direction. But here I am with a different job and I
you
have more
just,
capacity. And I said, I know it's kind of weird, isn't it? But as you said, they're powerful. But the kidney adrenal thing is interesting, and I'll share a story with
Mhm.
you and everyone here. I remember being in training with one of my main mentors, Kathy Kane, who taught me these kidney adrenal pieces and a lot of the other lessons in the course. And I can't remember the specifics, but a client of hers or a student of one of her students was doing this kidney adrenal work with I think it was a gentleman whose kidney had stopped working, something like that. But for whatever reason, they didn't remove it, because you can remove a kidney and still function, because we have two of them. So for whatever reason, they didn't remove this person's kidney. And while doing the kidney adrenal work consistently, this isn't just like one thing,
Consistently.
you have to do it
Yeah.
consistently, it started to come back to life. Like it started to work again. And that kind of defies all medical logic,
I love it.
right? It's
Yeah.
kind of cool.
That's truly incredible. Just, I think going through chronic illness or like doctors or people, all these limitations, and you were the first person that gave me hope in myself that our bodies are our own best healers, and like you do this work, you're doing it for yourself. It's possible on so many levels. And then consistently doing the adrenal kidney exercises, I could actually feel them drop within my body. Whoa! The first time that happened, I was like, "Whoa, this is so weird."
What do you remember? I want to hear your experience.
Yeah, I was doing. I don't think it was the first one where you know have the awareness. I think it was the one that's associated with like the diaphragm lesson. Yeah, and and yeah, I was working with them, and I had my hand in a fist, and I had it next to my side, and I was imagining my kidney, my left one dropped, not my right one.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess there's more space on that side, maybe.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I had my fist there, and I pretend like it was, and I was wanting them to just drop and settle, and I was pretending it was an elevator, and I was like, as my hand moves, my kidney's going to just move with it, and it's going to drop down and become nourished and have all this space to breathe, you know? And so I was doing that, and then I was like, as I open my hand, it's like that last little release to settle it down. And I did that, and I could just feel it drop like a thud. And oh my gosh, this is so cool. It's amazing. But
Good work.
so it was part of, you know, what you were doing, but then also using your own imagination to meet the level, you know, that you're working at as well. So
That's a great story.
that was really, because you
Yeah.
talked about it in
Yep.
it. You're like, at some point you may be able to feel this, and
Yeah.
I did. So
That's great. And as a teaching point, the reason we're teaching you guys that is, guys and gals, is that when we're stressed, when we've been under like intense stress for a whole lifetime, you know, this could be in utero, it could even be, you know, past trauma from other generations. Our system will store a bit of an armoring of like protection and don't let me in, and I've got to be strong and never let the guard down, so to speak. And as you tune in to that potential and the structure, and this is, I think, where it's really important, as you know, Raven, is that we're not just imagining it, we're actually visualizing the structure and the change. And then you having your intuition to have your hand and then release it. It's very, dare I say, Obi-Wan Kenobi for those that know Star Wars, right? It's like you're demanding with intention a shift in the energy, but it's also changing the actual cell and the organ.
yeah.
And that thud can be felt. Sometimes people will even hear them because it's like ricocheting through the tissues. And sometimes, just to verify what you were saying, like some kidneys are a bit strongerly gripped and adrenal than the other. And so some people will actually be more reliant on one side to keep them going. And then so sometimes one side will actually relax sooner because it's less on. And then the other one's a little more stubborn because it's like, I'm not so sure I'm going to let this down quite yet.
That's a really good tip.
That makes sense?
Yeah, I would say that I have like more pain on my right side, and so I would imagine that right one's just hanging on for dear life up there. Just
Yeah. And sometimes we need that, you know, like if we're still living in a situation that is not the best, we can't ask the body to totally let the guard down because that unconscious wants to protect us.
Yeah.
And that's okay.
Yeah.
Any other things that you'd like to share a part of this journey with getting to know your body at this level?
At one point, had stopped doing the work, and this is kind of important. I hit that wall of resistance, self-sabotage, different things that you talk about, and you're like, it's that moment that you should keep going where you know you're going to meet that life force energy that maybe you've never even met before, or, you know, and it seems scary. And so I really just had like this mantra, I guess. It was like every time I'm conflicted, do the work. If I decide to do the work and start doing other things in a rush before, pause, like do the work. When I'm obsessively tired and hungry, do the work. And like there's nothing wrong with me, I just need to do the work. Like all those things just to keep, coming back to it because I'd be like, yeah, I'm gonna do it. I recognized it. Like, okay, get back in, and I say to do the work because it's at different points. It may not just be
Yeah.
one thing. And so, yeah, getting into it, just continuing in it, it definitely is worth it. I think sometimes we get to resistance and we think of it in a manifestation way. It's like, oh, what you resist persists, or what, but honestly, underneath it is just it's so much life. Yeah.
Mm. And it sounds like you're very disciplined. Would you say you've got that good discipline? Like you're talking to yourself, you're coaching yourself
Yeah.
to continue to do the work. Did you find that there was a moment where you did slip and you just completely let it go, and then
Yeah.
there was a
Mhm.
consequence to that? Tell me about
Yeah,
that.
there was. I was just doing so well, and, I actually got long COVID and, a separation from my spouse, and so this whole big thing just my life blew up, and then I I just stopped. That's why I had my mantra, like, "Just do the work."
Yeah, yeah.
And then, I was looking back at some things that I had started. I had started a list. It was called, like, 100 Little Things, and it was all the stuff that I was keeping track of that I was proud of, that I knew I'd been working on and felt more capable in, and then I was looking over that list again, and I had felt myself not really aligning with it anymore, and I was like, "Oh my god, do you see all that life, like, you're missing out on?" Because at this point, there was an excuse. I knew it intellectually, my body knew it physically, it was craving it, and yeah.
We're human.
Yeah.
We're
So
human. Thanks for that. No, I think it's important for folks to hear that, because those that really thrive and come back and continue to practice, they will say that they kind of fall off the wagon,
yeah.
but that's okay. It doesn't mean that it's not working. It just means that your system needed a little reminder, or maybe even a little break,
Mhm.
right? To just see the
Yeah.
difference between when you are and not. Um, Now that you're a year in, um, how are you feeling in your resiliency and capacity now compared to a year ago, at this time, for example?
Yeah, that's almost a hard question right now because I'm getting into the deeper layers.
Hmm.
And
Yes, tell
so
me more.
days where you think you might be regressing, or days where you feel totally wiped out, but you know that you're not, you know that you've come a long way. And so, um, just showing up here, I feel like is a testament because, just being recluse and in bed all the time. That was another thing with, DNRS, was like every time you were gonna do it, you just had to isolate. "Oh, I'm triggered, isolate, go do this program." You
Mm,
have to create this, little utopia for you to go and be in. But not with this, it's like encouraged to be in life. "Hey, you're going on a walk. Can you bring orienting awareness into that? Can you, um, you know, do containment when you're having a stressful conversation with someone that maybe they don't
yeah.
know?" So it's very integrative, but I also am doing wonderful things, like, I started sailing, I'm outside every day, or, um, gosh, there's
Yeah.
just so much. Yeah, like, your intuition starts to come back online, or for me, I didn't even know I had that. I'm like, "What's intuition?" Listening to yourself? I don't wanna listen to
Ah,
myself, it sounds horrible, you know? Because that chatter, that stress physiology, and so it can be things like one day it was night. I live, like, on a nature preserve, and we usually get, like, different animals, bugs, things like that. It just comes
yeah.
with the territory. And there's, like, carpeting in some of the rooms, and there was string, and I went to go, like, pick it up like you would, just from a loose piece off of clothing, and I was like, "Oh, I don't think I should. And I turned on the light. It was a scorpion.
Oh
Yeah,
my
like
gosh.
a little one. And it was just like a really light amber colored one. And I was about to pick it up, but something in me was like, no, like, don't do that. Turn on the light. Oh, okay, yeah. So
Brilliant.
things like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, your neuroception, use that fancy word,
Yeah.
perception of safety or danger, and you decided to orient to it first.
Yeah.
Brilliant. I love it.
So there's so many things. I will have to say, like, if you want to keep going, I have one more about like just
Please.
a moment when I really felt like life force energy breakthrough and, all this true self started to come out. So I was doing the bell hand
Mhm.
exercise. And I know you've talked about you can have procedural memories that come back from doing something repetitively, something that you didn't get to finish, all this different stuff. And so I was doing it, and I had worked in bone marrow transplant, and I worked with devices. So you'd have an implant called a port,
Mhm.
and you take this needle that's attached to like a plastic piece, and that like it's called a Hoover needle,
Okay.
and you'd stick it through the skin into the device,
Yeah.
and it's like darts. And so I would do this upwards of 50 times a day.
Wow.
Right? So I was doing this and like bent forward on people's sides, and you see them,
Yeah.
limp,
Yeah.
just, tense and all of this, and you're not wanting to do it. And so I was working with really, really sick patients, and so I started doing that. And that's whenever I got sick. That was the last job that I had. And I went to do the bell hand, and I instantly went to that procedural memory of poking people so many
Mhm.
times a day, and just all the emotions, like everything started flooding forward. And I realized that a part of my illness was created because I felt, I'm
Mm.
gonna cry again,
Yeah, yeah, no, it's good.
unworthy to live because I didn't agree with what I was doing.
Right. It was too hard.
In that space, I didn't agree with um, some of the treatments, and this is coming from a very acclaimed medical center. It's not like anything that you were really doing, but as far as just what I internally felt about the human system, what people were capable of, constantly taking blood from people, things like that. And
Mhm.
so that was a huge part of stepping into healing, was just like forgiving myself for not being in alignment with who I was or what I believed, or also, even though at the time I thought I was helping people,
Of
but
course.
also hurting, and like literally going to someone's heart every day and sticking
Yeah.
a needle in it. Like, you don't think about it, but then later these things may come where it's
They did no, what you just
not meant to
shared
do
is
that every
no,
day.
no, and I guess it's so tricky because there are some jobs that must be done that aren't the nicest. First
Yeah.
responders, and I know from knowing a lot of first responders, for example, like firemen, policemen, ambulance drivers, like they see a lot of intense stuff, and the level of PTSD in those workers is really high. There's a lot of alcoholism and abuse because they're trying to feel better and numb out because the intensity is so strong. And often they're given a counselor or a psychologist, but what they really need to work on is getting that survival stress out.
Yeah.
um, for those that aren't familiar with the lingo of bell hand, it's a very subtle, it's totally fine. It's a very subtle neurosensory exercise based on the Feldenkrais method, which is something that I've studied and am a practitioner of. But I think it's a very big difference between a lot of the other brain training, rewiring programs, Raven, where it's just about the thinking or the emotions. Like we're getting you into the smallest detail of your sensory motor movements, which is the peripheral nervous system, which is the
Mhm.
autonomic nervous system. And if you don't revisit some of these movements, and we don't just do the hand thing the whole 12 weeks, there's spine and yeah, but it's the way in which it's taught and the slowness
The slowness.
And if you can recall, we don't do bell hand until the 9th module of the program. And there's a reason for that. This comes back to the layering and the building of the foundations, because by the time you got to that, you had the faculty to track and trace
Mm-hmm.
all the stuff. And then boom, there's that healing moment from when you did this bone marrow work you were a nurse,
Yeah.
correct? It reminds me of a story. Do you know who Dan Siegel is? He's a
It's so
MD.
funny. I'm actually opened up to that in
Oh,
another, like I have notebooks everywhere,
yeah,
Dan Siegel. And then I was gonna say that's why I appreciated not doing like a lot of neuroception stuff until,
later.
the end of the program, because it just, the way that everything builds is so beautiful. And
Yeah.
you're gonna know it, like as you start moving through it, you're gonna feel it in your body. You're gonna know when like you're ready for those things and how it all. But yeah, Dan Siegel, yeah.
Yeah, no, there's a story that he shared. I can't remember if it was a lecture or in one of his books, but he used to be, when he was an intern as a medical doctor, he had to do a stint in a pediatric oncology ward. I wasn't in it and I could cry thinking about it. And so one of his jobs as a young student was to go in and draw blood, like something crazy, like multiple times a day. And it was hard because these kids were sick, they were in pain. He didn't want to do it, just like you said. But he did it because it was his training, and he didn't realize how much that had impacted him until he was much older and he had his own children, and one of his kids was sick in the hospital, not with cancer, I don't think. It was just something a bit more benign, but it flooded back all the time that he had to do that. And you have to numb out to do that work. And then when you numb out with that, you're also numbing out all your other physiological processes, which is why I think a lot of these nurses, doctors, they do end up getting quite sick. Maybe not mentally ill, but their bodies start to break down, all these sorts of things. So I appreciate that story, because it shows a how if we do choose to do those sorts of professions, because I'm not saying one shouldn't be a doctor or anything like that, it is so important to know how to release this stuff, not just on your holiday, but like every night as a practice so that you don't build up that toxicity inside.
Yes, and that's another thing with SBSM is that I was doing all of these things like even body code, emotion code, MBSR, which is mind, body, spirit release, where you're just like having someone else sort of like woo woo, I don't really know how, tapping into your energetic field and like clearing emotions. But that at the end of the day, no one until this program had given me the tools and resources to build capacity for myself to move through things in real time as they're happening. It's I mean, really getting to the root instead of just taking, like, a little bit off the top here and there.
Yeah, thank
And
you.
so that's another just excellent point for whatever profession. I mean, everyone's life can benefit from this because no one's gonna be immune to the ups and
No,
downs. And so,
life is going to hand us things all the time,
yeah. Oh,
right?
that's a wonderful story about him that probably influenced my ability to recover.
Yeah, I'll have to find out if it was in his book Mindsight or if it was in a lecture that he was teaching. I really appreciated it because it was great to hear someone who's a bit more psychology based and medical
Mhm.
based admit the emotion and the impact that that was having without realizing it at all, right?
Mhm. Yeah, the
Any
blood draw. Taking that from people and, like, I felt like I was literally taking life,
life.
yeah, from from people, like
Yeah,
and again, we need doctors and
of
nurses and
course,
all of that,
of
but
course.
mhm,
No, I'm all for medical systems when it's what is needed.
right.
And as you know, and we've learned that a lot of the time it doesn't help with these other things that many people are struggling with.
Mhm.
Anything, what's on your horizon? Like, what are you excited about? I know that your life sounds like it's shifting a little bit right now, but what is your focus for the next little while?
Um, that's a good question.
Mm,
I am looking to get back into working. I'm not sure exactly what that will be, but definitely feeling ready for it, ready to engage more with the world. I am focusing a little bit more actually back on the work because I had taken that time off
Yeah.
and just realizing how much it propels you forward, even in the weirdest ways, the things that you don't think are correlated whatsoever. And lo and behold, they are.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I'm really also potentially wanting to start a project of I lost a lot of fun, and I didn't grow up as a child that got to play, and so figuring that back out, or allowing that maybe is a better term for that, and so maybe wanting to start a project, helping just connect people back to, things and experiences or even material things that were forgotten or lost within that, that can really move you forward majorly when you're meeting those early winnings, those unmet needs. So,
That's great.
yeah.
Completely informed.
Yeah,
Let me know when you have a website and all the things, and we'll let people
yeah, so we're
know.
excited.
Anything else you'd like to add, Raven? I think we've covered a lot, but is there
Thank you
any?
so much. Yeah,
Yeah.
one thing that I think I would wanna say, to anyone that's made it this far is,
Thank you for
is
making it this far.
yeah, thank you. One thing that was really important for me, and it's still important that I have to remind myself of daily, is not to get too attached to the state that you find yourself in, because as you're gonna learn, you're gonna really be educated on, you know, the signs and symptoms of that, how you're operating, and you may have a tendency to want to be in shame or judgment, and just know that your body is doing the best that it can, and it's, like, literally there to help you, not to harm you, and so when you find yourself moving, especially as you start to regulate, you're gonna move through probably those systems a lot more frequently.
Yeah,
Up and down, up and down, up and down, and so just give yourself grace as you're recognizing what state you're in and know that you're in that spot for a reason. So,
that's
yeah.
beautiful. And I want to acknowledge your regulation. I mean, we didn't meet before we got on this call,
No.
but watching you move through some of the emotion and some of the activation just naturally and then coming back down the other side was just so beautiful to watch. So
Thanks.
you're welcome. Thank you for doing the work and being so dedicated. It's paid off. It's clearly
It's yeah.
paid off. And would you say, because you mentioned it was chronic fatigue, that kind of thing that you were experiencing when
Mhm.
you went on this journey to find health and healing modalities, would you say your energy now is where you want it to be? Are you still working on that?
I'm still working on that because I have suppressed so much of who I am that I have a feeling there's a lot more in there.
Yeah, I think
And so
so.
so that's why I think that, no, I'm not quite satisfied with it yet,
Fair
but
enough.
it's getting there, for sure. So, one thing that I noticed, I thought I didn't have energy for all of these years, and then I was in so much anxiety and worry all the time, and I had to switch one day, and it was like, "That's energy. That's energy, that's energy." I thought I didn't have any. It's just misplaced. It's trapped or it's, not serving me, and so that's
Got
one
it.
cool thing. 'Cause whenever you're laying in bed and you think you can't get up or even meet your daily needs, but you can sit there and ruminate and worry all day, just take it as encouragement that it's there. I mean, it is.
It's
So
so good. I think that you have a career as a coach in this work in the future, Raven. I'm just going to put
oh
that in there.
gosh.
Yeah,
Right.
that's
You have a
beautiful.
program coming out, right?
Yeah, yeah. So who knows?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
Anything else? It's been such a joy to
Yeah.
meet you and
There's like I feel like I could go on forever. Oh, I will leave everyone with a beautiful song.
mm,
It's by a person named Trevor Hall. I don't know if you're familiar with him. He has a song called Blue Sky Mind.
okay.
And it's just like literally, I think, a minute and 19 seconds long. But it could serve as your mantra throughout this. And it's talking about how you're going to get free this time, and then the blue sky mind. So that was like in Buddhism where you just have like this peaceful, open mind, right? And then the whole song is just in and through the body, in and through the body. And that's what it is.
Beautiful.
Yeah, he's in Red Rocks, Colorado. So in and through the body, all along. So maybe all that you've been searching for all along, in and through the body.
Beautiful. Thank you so much.
Thank you. This is so much fun and such a pleasure to meet you. I feel like I met a hero today.
Thanks everyone for watching and listening, and we will see you next time.